My father stole his own mother's life savings, then abandoned her at the airport without a second glance. He thought he'd gotten away with the perfect crime. But one forgotten bank statement uncovered a secret that destroyed his family, his reputation, and the life he'd built. Welcome to USA Cinema. If you enjoy powerful family dramas, shocking betrayals, and unforgettable revenge stories, you're in the right place. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to USA Cinema. My name is Emma Carter, and at 32 years old, I thought I knew exactly who my family was. I trusted them. I loved them. I would have done anything for them, but at 5:27 that morning, one sentence from my father shattered everything I believed about my life. Mom, you don't actually have a ticket. For a few seconds, I didn't even process what he had said. Around me, the airport was already awake. Suitcases rolling, announcements echoing, people rushing toward gates like every second mattered. But in that moment, everything slowed down for me, because there was absolutely no way the woman who had spent 40 years saving every dollar she earned should have been receiving a sentence like that. My grandmother stood beside me, holding onto the handle of her old suitcase. The same suitcase she had used for over a decade, the same one she had always said she would take to. Paris one day, her dream trip, Rome, Paris, London, every place she had talked about for decades, like they already belonged to her future. She didn't speak. She just looked at my father. And for the first time that morning, I saw something in his expression I had never seen before. Uncertainty, not guilt, not sadness, something colder. My aunt was standing a few feet away, pretending to check her phone. Like she hadn't heard anything. Like it wasn't happening, but she had heard it. Everyone had. And no one said a word. My grandmother slowly opened her travel folder. Inside was the printed itinerary she had been carrying for weeks. She looked at it for a long moment, then closed it again. No ticket? She asked quietly. My father finally exhaled. Like this was just an inconvenience. Mom, I must have forgotten to book yours. It's not a big deal. You can just stay back. We'll FaceTime you from Rome. Just like that. 40 years of saving. Gone in a sentence. And then he actually shrugged. That small gesture did something inside me that I still can't fully explain. Because this wasn't a mistake, it felt practiced, intentional, like this moment had already been decided. Long before we ever stepped into that airport, my grandmother didn't cry, she just nodded once. I understand, she said. But I knew she didn't. Not yet. We started walking towards security without her. All of them. My father, my aunt, her husband, the kids, the entire family. Moving forward, like she wasn't standing there anymore. Like she had already been erased from the trip she paid for. I looked at my boarding pass, then I looked at her, and that was the moment everything changed. Because I realized something I had been ignoring for years. My father wasn't careless with her money. He was in control of it. And control like that doesn't happen by accident. It happens in silence. Over time, behind. Trust, behind. Family, behind excuses that sound reasonable when you don't look too closely. And suddenly, the missing plane ticket wasn't the biggest betrayal anymore. Not even close. Because I had a feeling this wasn't about a ticket at all. It was about something much bigger. Something I had never been allowed to see. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing the same sentence replay in my head. Mom, you don't actually have a ticket, but it wasn't just the words anymore. It was the way he said them, calm, controlled. Like it had already been decided, like my grandmother's presence at that airport had never really mattered in the first place. By morning, I knew I was wrong about something important. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern, and patterns don't happen overnight. I found my grandmother sitting in her kitchen when I woke up. Same old wooden table, same chipped mug, same quiet house that suddenly felt different. She was making tea like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't been erased from a trip she had paid for with years of her life. "Grandma," I said softly. She didn't look up. "I'm fine." "Emma." But her voice wasn't fine. It was controlled. The kind of control people use when they don't want to fall apart in front of someone else. I sat across from her. "Do you want to talk about it?" She finally looked at me, and for a second, I saw something break behind her eyes. Then she shook her head. "No, there's nothing to talk about." But I knew better. Something was wrong. Something deeper. Later that day, I decided to take a walk through her neighborhood. It was quiet. Too quiet. The same streets she had lived on for nearly 30 years. The same streets where she raised my father and my aunt. The same place she had built her entire life. But now, it felt empty. Like the house she lived in was slowly shrinking around her. That's when I noticed something strange. Her mailbox. It was full, too full. Junk mail. Old letters. Unopened envelopes stacked like they had been ignored for weeks. That didn't make sense. My grandmother never ignored her mail. Never. That evening, I asked her directly, "When's the last time Dad came by?" She paused, then answered too quickly. "He checks on me. He's busy, but he checks on me. Double quotes. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right. So I waited. 2 days, just watching. And what I saw made my stomach tighten. My father showed up, but he didn't stay. He never came inside. He walked to the mailbox, took the mail, got back in his car, and left. 5 minutes. That was it. No conversation. No visit. No questions. Just control. Quiet, efficient, routine. Like he wasn't visiting his mother, like he was managing something that night. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I asked a neighbor, an older woman who lived 2 houses down. She hesitated when I mentioned my grandmother's name. Then she said something that changed everything. "I've been worried about her." My heart sank slightly. "Why?" "She stopped going out about 2 years ago," she said. "She used to meet her friends every Friday. Then, suddenly, she just stopped. She said she couldn't afford it anymore." That sentence hit harder than I expected. Couldn't afford it? My grandmother had worked her entire life, saved every dollar, lived simply, never wasted anything. So why would she suddenly be broke? Unless she wasn't, unless something else was happening. That night, I waited until she went to bed. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I opened her filing cabinet. Inside were old bills, medical papers, tax documents, and then I found it, a bank statement. My hands went cold as I unfolded it. Her retirement savings account, or what was left of it. The balance didn't make sense. It was too low, far too low. Money was missing, large amounts, over time, slow, steady, almost invisible, unless you were actually looking for it. And then I saw a name. My father's name attached to authorization access. My chest tightened because now it wasn't a feeling anymore. It was proof. Something was happening here. Something planned, something hidden, and I was standing in the middle of it without even realizing how deep it went. I closed the file slowly. My hands were shaking, and in that moment, I understood something I didn't want to accept. The airport wasn't the beginning. It was the exposure. The mistake wasn't the missing ticket. The mistake was thinking it had ever been about travel at all. And somewhere in my mind, a single thought formed clearly for the first time. If my grandmother had been stolen from, then someone was going to answer for it. By the time I found the truth, I couldn't look at my father the same way again, not even in my memories. Because once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. And what I saw wasn't just betrayal. It was planning. It was structure. It was years of decisions that slowly removed my grandmother from her own life without anyone noticing. Or worse, without anyone caring enough to stop it. The next morning, I called a friend who worked in banking. I didn't tell her everything. Just enough. Just questions. And within an hour, I had something I wasn't prepared for. My grandmother's retirement account had been accessed repeatedly over the last several years. Withdrawals, transfers, management fees. Except there was no management. There was just movement. Money going out and not coming back. All authorized by my father. I stared at the screen for a long time because there's a moment when information stops feeling like information and starts feeling like impact, like a physical hit. That was that moment. When I showed my grandmother, she didn't react the way I expected. No shouting, no breakdown, just silence. She sat at the kitchen table and stared at the papers, like she was reading someone else's life. Finally, she spoke. I trusted him because he is my son. Her voice cracked slightly, and I thought that meant something. That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't just financial abuse. It was emotional theft. Years of trust turned into leverage. 2 days later, I contacted an attorney. Not just any attorney, someone who handled elder financial abuse cases. When I explained everything, he didn't interrupt once, he just listened. And when I finished, he leaned back and said one sentence, "This is not new to me." That's when I understood something worse. This kind of thing happens more often than people think, just quieter. Hidden behind family dinners, behind phone calls that say, "I'm taking care of everything," double quotes. Behind smiles that don't match reality. The legal process started fast, too fast for my father to ignore. Letters, notices, account, freezes. Then the phone calls started. First, to my grandmother. She didn't answer. Then to me. I did. "Why are you doing this?" he asked immediately. His voice wasn't confused. It was angry, controlled anger, the kind that expects obedience. "You're destroying this family." I stayed quiet for a moment, then I said something I still remember clearly. "No, Dad, you did that already." Silence. Then he laughed. Once. Short. Sharp. "You don't understand what you're doing." But I did, for the first time in my life. I understood everything, and that was the problem. The family meeting happened 9 days later, at my grandmother's house. Same dining table, same kitchen, but nothing felt the same anymore. My father walked in first, confident like he still had control over the room. My aunt followed behind him, avoiding eye contact, and then my grandmother entered slowly but steady. She sat at the head of the table. Not him. Her. That was new. The attorney placed the documents on the table, one by one: bank records, authorization forms, transaction history, years of movement, years of missing money. The room didn't speak for almost a full minute. Then my father finally broke it. "This is ridiculous." His voice was louder now. "This is a misunderstanding." The attorney looked at him calmly. "Which part?" No answer. She even started planning something. I never thought I'd hear from her. A trip to Europe, the same one she was denied. Only this time, she was in control. And when I asked her if she ever thought about that day at the airport, she looked at me and said, "Because there wasn't one that made sense anymore." Then my grandmother spoke, and the entire room changed. "I don't want your excuses." She looked at him directly. "I want my life back." For the first time, he didn't respond immediately. That silence said more than anything else, because in that moment, something shifted. He realized this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was accountability. Legal. Final. Unavoidable. The court case moved forward quickly after that. Evidence was clear, accounts were reviewed, patterns confirmed, access proven, and slowly, everything he built around control started collapsing. The final ruling came weeks later: restitution, account restrictions, legal penalties, and a permanent removal of financial authority over my grandmother's assets. When it was over, my father didn't look angry anymore. He just looked smaller. Not physically, but in a way that's hard to explain. Like the version of him I grew up with had finally disappeared. My grandmother chose not to press criminal charges. That was her decision, not mine. When I asked her why, she simply said, "I don't want revenge. I just want peace." And somehow, that hit harder than anything else, because I realized something in that moment. True strength isn't destroying someone who hurt you. It's choosing not to become like them. Months later, life didn't go back to normal. It became something new, different. My grandmother started living again, not the quiet survival version, the real one. She rejoined her friends. She laughed again. That was the day I stopped trusting the wrong people. Double quotes. Then she smiled and started trusting myself again. I still think about that sometimes because that's what this was really about. Not money, not tickets, not even betrayal. It was about control and how quietly it can destroy a life if no one is paying attention. But also, how one moment of truth can take it all back. Thank you for watching this story. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more short dramas stories, revenge stories, love stories, and much more.